And we are live.
We are live.
Artie, you're really dark.
Oh yeah, I know. Hold on. Oh, hold on. I got a light. I forgot I have a light. Boom. Let me turn the light up. There we go. So, and you can hear the crime occurring in the background, I believe.
The crime. Well,
the crime.
Okay.
That's
so
that. They've found human remains down the street again. I'm sure that's what it is.
So how are you, man?
I'm doing all right. I had a good day, goodish day. Anyway,
yeah, we were talking about music just before, and the Canadian aspect. And talking about Canadian aspect, I'm gonna plug something. You okay with me plugging something?
Oh, by all means.
We are Wednesday, so tomorrow I'm live at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time with my God.
With all those Canadians?
Yeah, Margan Guyon Retzi. Let me see here. Brian Train had to step out, man. So it's gonna be Morgan. I got Robert Deleski, Marco Poutre. So
I didn't know he was Canadian, actually. Robert, I didn't know Robert Deleski was Canadian.
Well, I didn't know either. But that's what's happening tomorrow for me in my life.
You don't all know each other in Canada? I thought you all knew each other.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we do. Hey, hold on a second. Is it just me, or is there a big UFO thing happening here?
I just saw something on some website about UFOs, and I didn't read it, so I don't know what it's all about. Okay, so you could be right.
Do you know what's happening? And I can't believe we're just talking about war games, which is a wonderful thing. And by the way, hello, chat.
Are we talking about war games with aliens?
No, the thing is that you've heard of this guy called Bob Lederer.
I think so, yeah.
Right, and I'm not a UFO guy. I'm not a conspiracy guy.
But that's not crazy hair alien guy, for the record. That guy's name's Giorgio something.
What?
Keep going. Okay. It's okay.
So, this guy, anyways, he talks and he says, "Yeah, I worked at Area 51. Yeah, I worked on the element 115 that defies gravity and it has its own gravitational field." Anyway,
everything has its own gravitational field. That's
oh my God! Work. Okay. Let's talk about ancients. I want to talk. I want some answers.
Maybe you think I didn't take a year of college physics.
Okay, so Artie, you tell us your background on the history of this Ancients thing here.
Okay, so I mean, I've played a decent number of Ancients games. I've played Great Battles of History, and I've played Commands and Colors Ancients, and I've played the Ancient World series from Richard Berg, and I've played Imperium Romanum 2, not 3. I got 3 now. It's the same game. So I have a decent amount of stuff for Ancients. Almost everything I've actually played has been like Ancient Romans or Ancient Greeks. Dan's example was an interesting one. He was going to bring up Cataphract, which is an entry in the Great Battles of History series, and it's about Byzantine battles. Now, in this case, it's a pretty easy decision. So the question that historians have asked in recent decades is, where does the Ancients period end and the medieval period begin? And the current thinking, as of when I took the class on Byzantine history, was that after the ancient period ends, which is about 5th century, there is a period called late antiquity, which is of which the Byzantine stuff is the best documented because they were a highly literate and advanced society, and they wrote a lot of stuff down.
5th century.
Well, so I'm saying, I mean, the natural end of the ancient period is the sack of Rome in 450 something, right?
Okay.
So Western Roman Empire more or less ceases to exist as an actual thing.
Yeah, but
that time it hangs around for a while, but it's nothing like.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call 455. Oh yeah, no, that's ancient. That's ancient.
So a term that doesn't get used anymore is the Dark Ages. That's a period where we'd say 500-600 AD is the Dark Ages. We don't really talk about that anymore. I think the only context in which I would use that term, bearing in mind that I have some academic, learning in this field, is probably with like Dark Ages Britain, where stuff's not, the Romans left and it's not really particularly well documented. A game like Morgan's game, Pendragon, actually, right, I would describe as from a genre standpoint, as a Dark Ages game. But Dark Ages is more closely associated with the medieval period than the ancient period.
Yeah, okay.
And then, of course, Great Battles of History is all over the place. I mean, it's got 5000 BC battles in Chariots of Fire, all the way up to Gustavus Adolphus battles in Lion of the North. And even after they abandoned that, some of the Japanese games, some of those happen in the 15, 16, 1700s.
You're talking about like
Ron and Samurai.
And have you ever played Ron? And
I have not.
And I would consider that medieval.
I would too.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you say medieval, it's not the Japanese samurai that comes flashing in your face. It's
not normally. So
yeah.
Here's something that I don't talk about a lot. I'm still technically involved in that. I still have a lot of friends who are still active with this, but I haven't really participated in a few years in a group called the Society for Creative Anachronism, which is sort of an educational, sort of a social club thing where people get together and dress in medieval clothing and hit each other with sticks.
Yeah, I was gonna say beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah. So, and hey, you're in, I don't know what Quebec's in actually, I forget, but you've got it up. It's worldwide. I mean, they're all over the place, but it's mostly here in the US. So it's not common to see, and their definition of medieval period is 600 to 1600. Now that's nothing, that's just a rule of thumb. Because do you see ancient Greek guys walking around in the full, whatever that linen armor was called? Yes, you absolutely do. Do you see guys walking around in kilts all the time? Kilts are not period. And very occasionally, one of the first times I was in one of the big battles. So there's a big event in Pennsylvania where the battle might have 5,000 people in it. One of the things I saw in that battle was there was this group of samurai guys who were like samurai archers, and they had the big samurai crossbows and those big scutum type shields, and they would come up and set their crossbows up and stand behind them and start firing them. So it's a thing. It is akin to the medieval period in that it is largely, they had gunpowder, of course, but it's largely a sword and shield type of period.
Artie, sorry to cut you off here. We got Jan Heinemann. It's midnight in Germany, and he's still up, and he's in school. He should be going to bed. Go to bed, Jan. But he says something here. There were so-called Dark Ages after the Minoans. When is the Minoans?
So that's like, I think he's talking about the late Bronze Age collapse, where a bunch of civilizations around the Mediterranean all collapsed around the same time. It's not particularly well. I did not take a class in this. I've watched YouTube videos on this. And I think that was about 500 BC, something like that. No, it's older than that, 1500 BC, something like that. Don't quote me on the dates. But yeah, so the Minoans were like this early civilization in Greek, speaking a presumably non-Greek language that I think still has not been deciphered. The Greeks had not shown up in Greece yet.
Hold on a second. Okay, can you please give me the Dark Ages period here?
Well, like I said, that's a term that historians aren't going to use anymore. We can use it as gamers. That's fine. I'd say it's about 500 to. I would draw the end of the Dark Ages at Christmas Day, 800 AD.
What happened?
Charlemagne was crowned the Holy Roman Emperor.
There you go.
That's is that completely arbitrary? Yes, it totally is. Completely is. But late antiquity extends. Certainly, the 500s Byzantine battles that you see in Cataphract, that's certainly a late antiquity. Those are battles that are more akin to ancient battles than medieval battles.
And Artie, you just got complimented by an intellect German who studies history.
I did.
And he says Artie knows his stuff. Nice.
I am a font of useless information.
It's great.
Okay. This is, it occurred to me. This is a thing that like a self-realization thing that happened. It's like, look, 8 years ago or whatever, all of my hobbies revolve around history. All of them. I was in the SCA, and we would do like tabletop role-playing games that were set in medieval Europe, and I would do all this research on how to run this game set in 1150 England. It was what I was doing anyway. So that's why I ended up getting a degree in history. So it's like, well, hell, I might as well have a piece of paper, right? So Timon6219 asks about thoughts about the Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe Edition that is on the GMT P500 list. that is going to be yet another value-packed entry in the Great Battles of History series. There are people that don't like the Great Battles of Julius Caesar battles because they're Romans versus Romans. It's the Civil Wars. And some people don't think that's interesting. I think that's very interesting. But also in there, you're going to get all those Caesar conquest of Gaul stuff, which is, you know, Romans against various Gauls and Germans and stuff like that. There's even some naval stuff in there. So it's absolutely, I mean, if you're interested in the topic, and everything in there should be playable with simple GBOH if you're not really, I don't think simple GBOH is that much simpler than regular GBOH.
Okay.
But it does play faster. So that's a consideration. But I mean, most Great Battles of History battles are not that big and don't take that long to play. Almost all of them are playable in a sitting.
But man, I mean, it looks so daunting.
It does.
You know what I mean? And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. My perception. I hope I didn't cut you off, Artie. Did I cut you off?
No, it's all good. It's all good.
When I think of like a hex encounter game, when I think of games like war games, I think of whether it be tactical, operational, whatever. There's terrain that you can use to your advantage. Okay. So I'm gonna just pull out a map here, and this is.
I know where this is going.
Yeah. So here we have. This is just one side of. Well, tell me if you see it properly here. Hold on.
Which one are we looking at?
We're looking at this one here.
Top one. Okay, so you got what, like a road or a?
Yeah, look, you can hide here.
Something like that.
You can hide here.
Right.
What about you can hide here? You can hide here.
So the ground that the leaders chose to fight on in a lot of ancient battles was open ground. So that's why those maps look like that. And that's actually one thing that Great Battles of History does, it has to its advantage, is that there's a lot of extra battles you could put on the same blank map.
But
there's counterexamples too. You look at the Plataea map from Hoplite, for example. That's loaded with terrain. That's all terrain.
It's funny, eh? You just made me realize something. For some reason, I just thought ancients, these guys have no terrain. What the hell? There was no terrain back then? There was no trees? What the hell is going on? So,
no, but that's not where they thought that's not where they wanted to fight.
Well, okay, but that's very interesting that you say that. I didn't know that it was a thing done on purpose.
Let me mention, though, there's a selection bias occurring there because the battles that we know about were the battles that civilizations that wrote their stuff down participated in.
That's right. Yeah.
So the Romans against the Carthaginians, both literate civilizations, wrote stuff down. So they weren't conducting guerrilla warfare, right? Which was something that was happening up in Germania, for example, during a lot of the Roman period, and in Gaul for that matter. That's why there's a coin game on the Gallic Revolt. So. Now, and also that some of the Greek, like the Greek, some of the ancient formations were really rigid, where even for them to turn was a big problem. That's why some of those, like the phalanxes and stuff in GBOH, take cohesion hits when they turn. That's why.
And the thing is that it throws the little strategy that I have in my head completely out of the window. I don't know what to do. What am I going to do with these two squares here? And there's two squares there. Okay, shoot till everybody's dead.
So that's a great question.
Yeah, it's what the hell's going on?
But that turns it into pure strategy because you don't have a terrain advantage to exploit. So your ability to maneuver the individual units is what's going to matter there, rather than now. Sometimes there'll be an advantage in Cannae, for example, which is Hannibal versus some couple of Roman bozos, where Hannibal completely smokes the Romans and it's one of the greatest defeats in the history of the Roman Republic. The Romans, I think, outnumbered the Carthaginians on that battlefield, and on paper, I'm sure it looked like they had an advantage. They had the troops were good. But there's a huge difference in the type of army that the Romans have versus the type of army that the Carthaginians have. The Carthaginians are way more mobile. They have more light troops. They have more cavalry. So they have a potential advantage, at least, that they could exploit, in that they have capabilities that the Romans don't have, and a better leader in that particular case. So I mean, all war games are asymmetric, right? Because at least all historical war games are asymmetric. What are the points of asymmetry, right? Terrain isn't one of them in a lot of these ancient battles. Or sometimes there'll be a river, that'll be like a shallow stream or something that'll run across the battlefield, or there'll be a hill on one side or something like that. But a lot of them, terrain's not a big factor. So you have to look at the other places where the battle is asymmetric, in the types of troops that are available, the quality of the leadership that's available, the player's ability to manage those troops. I suck at GBOH personally. I don't play it enough.
I wouldn't even know where to start. Okay, so everybody is in order there. You got four. Look, Artie, I'm going to call them legions for because I'm ignorant of these formations. So you got four squares, so four legions, right? And you got four legions over there. Okay, so what happens? Someone has the initiative, right?
That's a thing. Well, so that's a thing that you're going to see a lot of in the Great Battles of Julius Caesar battles in the Civil Wars. Is you're going to have legions on one side and legions on the other side, and legions in GBOH have a specific formation that they're in, and they have certain special rules that they have to abide by and stuff like that. But it's going to be the same type of forces on both sides. So that's another point in which we have to look for other causes of asymmetry. Now, in different GBOH games handle this differently, to the extent that it's a really pretty loose system. I mean, we do, after all, have a GBOH game that's about naval battles, for example. It doesn't use any of the same rules. We have ancient city fights in Caesar and Alexandria. We have that big siege in the Alesia game. So in some of them, in some of the recent ones, in Hoplite anyway, it's a chit pull. So you draw a chit. That's the leader that gets activated. In older games, you would roll for initiative, and hopefully I'm not misremembering this. And then the player who got the initiative would pick a leader, or their lowest initiative leader would go first, then the highest initiative leader would go last. So somebody like an Alexander or a Caesar or something like that, presumably having the highest initiative rating on the board.
So basically, Artie, combat is like a block game. Okay, so you got four points. They turn it over. You got 3 points, 2 points, 1 point. Okay, this formation's gone.
So you track it. Almost never actually works that way, and this is one of the reasons why GBOH games tend to play relatively quickly, is because you're not sitting there grinding on each other for 3 hours with the forces just attriting against each other. One of the two armies is going to break, and a big portion of it is just going to try to flee. So you'll have these rout points, and once you hit a certain rout threshold, the battle's over. But almost always, before you've hit that level, you know who's going to hit the rout threshold before the other team is. So you don't always play the battle. You don't play it out to the bitter end unless you got somebody's a masochist or something like that. Nobody's going to do that. But you do track them with strength point chits that you then stack on top of the units or under the units, or however you're going to do it. But the unit will break before you eliminate its manpower.
You mean you have the option to break it, or it's?
I think you could voluntarily rout as well. Actually. But their morale will break and they'll scatter, and then once that starts to happen, you can end up with a domino effect where
I see what you're saying.
A whole flank might collapse. And
right, okay.
So it becomes about this micro maneuver in the opening of where are you hitting the other guy, and where is he hitting you?
So you're waiting for an opportunity.
Well, you can't just sit there and turtle either.
Well,
I guess you probably can, but that's crappy play.
Well, and you know what? Another strategic question here, and this is a historical strategic question. So this is ancients, right?
Right.
So all these formations, right up to Napoleon. So we have learned nothing, even in regards to terrain. We still keep these formations. Like the Civil War. Why would they keep these formations when they have everywhere to hide and take shelter?
So, I mean, those things did evolve. One of the things that Great Battles of History is set up to do is to show the interaction between different tactical doctrines and weapon types, and in conflict with each other. So when you encounter, you know, a Roman legion versus these Greek hoplites, what happens? Well, you can model that in GBOH. So those things did evolve. A lot of like current military structure did end up evolving in like the late 1700s and the Napoleonic period. What we would recognize now as military structures, but for like a lot of the medieval period, you just have like war bands, right? You could have just some random Gallic or Germanic war band leader and his troops, whatever they are, and you see that in a game like Caesar Conquest of Gaul, for example. So they're units in the sense that you got to denote counter somehow, but they represent a completely different tactical doctrine, and they behave differently, and they are best employed differently in that game system. That's one of the things I don't like about simple GBOH is a lot of the detail that you're losing in order to get it to play faster is that exact kind of detail.
Now, in terms of fun factor, okay, you have a blank terrain mostly in these great battles of history, okay? So the way I think about it is that you're chipping at a block, and here's your opportunity. Let's say their morale broke, so you're gonna invade this flank.
So yes, but generally speaking, as long as you can initiate that exploitation properly, you'll blow the entire enemy army up. So you are in fact chip until the whole side of the block just sloughs away because of all the little pieces of damage that you've done to it over the course of the battle. So are there... Another thing is that Timon 6219 is talking about numbers, and that's something that definitely evolved. I mean, they're kind of big numbers. So a lot of the numbers you see in the primary sources for the Roman period are not supportable. Okay, you see, or the Greeks, right? So the 2 million man army of Xerxes at Thermopylae, that's nonsense. They didn't have 2 million men at Thermopylae. No, nobody thinks that they did. They might have had 150,000. That's a huge army.
Well, yeah, hold on a second.
You see those.
What about Barbarossa? They had 2 million going in, 2.5.
Well, hold on, I'll get there.
Right.
So we see those big armies of those very civilized, centralized states in the Ancients period, and then the medieval period happens, and you stop seeing big armies like that, and you don't really start to see that again until the Napoleonic period of those massive armies where you have hundreds of thousands of troops on the field. There was 500,000 men on the field at Leipzig, for example, in 1814. 13?
Is that insane? Is that insane? I can't fathom that. I can't. I can't. I can't.
I mean,
500,000 men.
So that's, yeah, I mean, that's like, I don't know, that's a whole bunch of different armies from a bunch of different countries. But,
man, they should have had drones back there, man. Anyways.
Or well, they had grape shot.
Well, so, I mean, to film it, I would have loved. Oh my God, I would have loved to see that. All right, so yeah, well, look, you've debunked a few things, and who's your preferred ancient designer?
Richard Berg. Sincerely, yep, absolutely. He's responsible for. So, Great Battles of History started out with Great Battles of Alexander. Okay. So, and that's I mean, I actually have the original, and it's a Mark Herman design. Richard Berg is not credited on that, but I think Berg got involved in SPQR, which is the second volume, and stayed involved the entire rest of the time. Plus, Berg did my other favorite operational ancient series, which is the Ancient World series from GMT. That's Rise of the Roman Republic and Carthage, the First Punic War, and they're supposed to finish. Mark Herman and Alan Ray are supposed to finish the long-awaited third volume, which is the Second Punic War, which is the Punic War that everybody knows about with Hannibal and the elephants and all that.
Man, that's
and the third Punic War was the Romans mopping up a generation later.
Now, obviously, Richard Berg must have studied in depth when he started to do a game like this.
Presumably, yeah. I mean, I never met Richard Berg, but I mean, he must have had encyclopedic knowledge of all kinds of things. I mean, he did such a huge number of games on such an enormous array of topics. It's sometimes said that he never did any World War II games, which is patent nonsense. He did, but he didn't do very many World War II games. And that's another reason why I think Berg was an interesting designer. A designer that certainly had his foibles as a designer. Certainly there were black holes of detail that he fell into from time to time, but he also did a great deal of interesting stuff. And
for an example, like what?
Of where he was lost in detail. Campaign for North Africa would be an obvious example.
Really?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you're tracking, individual fuel points and water points and all that other stuff. It's got a huge amount of logistics overhead. Now, I'd be curious, and I'm not curious enough to investigate this myself. I want somebody to do the work for me and tell me how much easier that game is to play now that we have things like spreadsheets and you can just spreadsheet all that logistics stuff out. I wonder how much easier it is to play. I do know that's for playing something like that, not Ancients, obviously, but in fact, it's the anti-Ancients. Federation and Empire, everybody at that table has a laptop. And they're doing all their production in Excel. So,
and going back to SPQR, because I have SPQR, and first of all, I just love it. That whole thing, I just love.
You have one of the newer ones, one of the more recent packagings.
Yeah,
the SPQR Deluxe, another massive value packaging from GMT, where there's just so much in there.
What was the game like? P500? That's like $60. What are you kidding me?
It might have been 70. But there's the current edition of SPQR, which as far as I know is still available. It has like 4 expansions in it. One of those expansions, Barbarian by itself, has like 12 more battles in it. There's like 30 battles in the box, or 35. I don't know, something like that. It's a huge amount and breadth of content that ranges all over the place, from like the Punic War stuff, which is what was in the original box, to all the expansions with the Pyrrhic Wars, with the war against Pyrrhus, and I think there's an expansion on the Jugurthine War in Africa. That's the one where Sulla became a notable individual for military leadership. All kinds of stuff. It's just loaded with content.
There's a subscriber. I don't know if he's here tonight. My God, I forgot his name. I can't believe it. Tostevin. Gilbert. Is it Gilbert Tostevin?
Gilbert. I have no idea how that last name is pronounced.
Well,
I have to tell you.
Tostevin, you're probably thinking.
I'm just from Ohio. I know who you're talking about, though.
Yeah, okay. So he's a professor of archaeology. I forget at what university right now. I know it, but whatever. And man, this guy could take a break, just play one of those SPQR games for a whole semester and put it in the curriculum, and like, man, that's.
I can tell you, so I can only speak firsthand about the history department at Ohio State. And I can tell you that one of my military history professors did, in fact, do wargaming with his grad students as part of various projects and stuff. So, and he has unfortunately passed away. And this is a guy who was, who's written a number of notable books as well. Was in Vietnam. He was like a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. Extremely colorful individual, would sometimes march into the classroom singing Napoleonic marching songs.
Fantastic, man.
A great experience. And I went out of my way to take him more than once. And then I was going to take him a third time on a class on the Napoleonic Wars. And I decided I was going to take a medieval history class instead. Yeah. And the medieval history class was a total dud, but he ended up dying in mid-semester.
Oh,
so shit. He only taught like the first week anyway. So
yeah, the teacher makes the course, man.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I had a lot of really good history professors at Ohio State, and I only really had one or two that I thought were not awesome, actually. So is that Fred asking about this SGBOH, which is Simple Great Battles of History? He may have missed this. So Gilbert Collins has done a video on this, and I agree with Gilbert on this. Simple GBOH, I don't think is necessarily that much. It's a little bit simpler than regular GBOH, and it plays faster. But one of the things that you lose in simple GBOH is that interaction between the different weapon systems and tactical doctrines that I think is what the system was designed to showcase in the first place. I think my recommendation is, I don't think it's magically easier to play. I would just start with small battles. An ideal starting volume is actually Great Battles of Alexander, because the current volume, the last printing, it's out of print now, has like a bunch of Philip of Macedon battles and early on, and they're quite small battles. They're on like half map battles. They're super fast to play. Once you get the hang of the system, you can play them in an hour. You can learn on those, and you also then, by starting with Great Battles of Alexander, you don't have to deal with the somewhat complicated Roman command rules that you have to learn in SPQR.
Oh, we got Jan saying something there. I've talked to a battlefield archaeologist who uses a 30-year war game, at least to sort his ideas on his excavation. There you go. That's what I was saying, Jan. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jan. God, I love people like that.
So yeah, I mean, don't think war games never have, at least in like military history departments, or even like sociological modeling. I mean, that's, if you put that on a board game, it ends up looking a lot like a war game. An example would be Empires of the Middle Ages, not Ancients, but you know, it's an SPI classic. I forget who the designer was, to be honest, but that's a game. It's not all that military focused. It's about the ebb and flow of empires and their rise and fall. So you can construct models like that without necessarily having to have an interest in military history specifically, and get some use out of them. A computer example would be any of the military grand strategy things from Paradox, like Europa Universalis or Crusader Kings or anything like that.
Artie, another question. That was a great question. I forgot.
I'm sure it was the most amazing question ever.
Hold on. Great deal. I see Battlefield 30 Years War. For God's sakes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Here, I got it. Would playing Command and Colors Ancients give me that Ancients feel?
I think it does. I mean, you're not getting the same amount of detail. I've played Commands and Colors Ancients, and it's a lot of fun. But you're going to see a lot of the same things. You're going to see not a ton of terrain. You're going to see forces that often are not obviously that different from one another. There are some differences. So, like the basic Commands and Colors Ancients game is mostly, I think, Punic War stuff, right? So you're going to see Romans and Carthaginians. You're going to have the same kind of asymmetry between the two forces, between the Roman forces with the legions, which at the time would be before the military reforms of Marius. I had to kind of put that together in my head. Versus Carthaginian forces that are, a lot of whom are mercenaries, a lot of whom are, you know, cavalry or light skirmishers, or stuff like that. So I like Commands and Colors Ancients, and it is a fun game to play. But what you're not going to get in it is all that extra texture that didn't come out right, that GBOH gives you about how those different tactical doctrines interact. It's kind of built in, right? Because you got, you know, these guys are more mobile, these guys are less mobile, these guys are more able to absorb hits, these guys are less able to absorb hits. So some of it's built in, but you're getting more of that, which is what's interesting to me in GBOH. That said, I could play, if, you know, once we have non-plague time again, I could go up and play Commands and Colors, whatever, every week if I wanted to, for 7 or 8 hours. I am not familiar with Phil's game Lost Battles, I will tell you that.
You're familiar with Patrick Mullen, I guess, eh?
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Pat is
McDonald's
a bit of a
military.
curmudgeon.
I love it.
What is he talking about? Is he talking about Commands and Colors, or is he talking about Phil Saban's game?
I don't know. I think he's talking about us.
I demand, that's plausible. Although I chose to not, I demand clarification. Ken Cloby mentioned Siege of Jerusalem, which is about one of, I forget which Jewish revolt that is, because there was more than one. My favorite,
the old Avalon Hill game you're talking
yeah,
about, right?
Somebody's bringing it back. I think Compass is bringing it back, and then MMP has a Storm over Jerusalem, which is an area impulse game on the topic. But it's the Roman siege of Jerusalem, and it's an interesting topic. There was I forget which Jewish revolt this was, but it was during the time of Nero, I believe. And so Nero decides, so you got to kind of understand a little bit about Roman religion and how it worked, where they had the imperial cult, which is sort of you worship the emperor too as sort of the divine father of the empire, right? So Nero's, the Jews had a special dispensation from Augustus because they supported Augustus in the conflict between him and Antony. That said, due to A, you helped me out, and B, you have this ancient tradition, and the Romans really respected the fact that the Jewish tradition was ancient. You can kind of do your own thing, and we will not require you to follow our Roman religious laws. And then Nero had the great idea of putting a statue of himself as the divine Nero in the temple at Jerusalem, and the Jews went nuts. And they were not having that. So
no.
In the temple, not a temple, the temple.
That's hilarious. That if that's not a bleep, I don't know what it is.
It's like the worst thing, the dumbest thing that Nero could do to make the Jews mad.
Oh, geez.
Was that actual thing. And it was never the same afterwards either, because after that you had the Jewish population was scattered in the Jewish diaspora, so they were kind of scattered all over the empire. So
what game, Marty, other than let's say I want to start playing Ancients with one of my friends, and he's interested.
Is your friend already a wargamer?
No.
Commands and Colors Ancients.
I knew you were going to say that. I didn't want to say
it's a great introductory game. It's fun to play. It's fluid. It doesn't take a long time. And then, you have a couple of different directions you can go from Commands and Colors Ancients. You can either...
Where would we go after that?
I would go directly to Great Battles of History. But you could also say, let's stick with this simple system and say expand it to Napoleonics or World War I or World War II or whatever, because there's a Commands and Colors game for everything now.
No, I know, but you're missing the strategy, like you said, the flanking, like looking at that, that's what you're missing in Commands and Colors. It's abstracted in Commands and Colors as it would be.
It's very abstract. And to me, Commands and Colors feels a lot like a miniatures game without the necessity of
That's right.
miniatures.
That's right. Yeah. Stone Age. What is that game?
HB. It's the mysterious HB has appeared in the chat once again. There is a game called Stone Age. I've never played it. I don't know anything about it.
That Harry Brewer.
It could be. Harvey Browenstein.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever. So, okay, so you would jump in right away, and that's a Berg game, isn't it? Mostly, it's a Berg system.
Commands and Colors is Richard Bull.
No. I'm talking about. You said you could go into right away simple Great Battles of History.
Or Great Battles of History. I don't know who wrote Simple Great Battles of History off the top of my head, because I play the regular one, and if I started with Simple Great Battles of History, I would want to step up to the. There's actually another advantage of Simple Great Battles of History that I didn't mention, and that's that it is a completely unified rule set. Now you can't just play any GBOH battle in Simple GBOH. You could play the vast majority of them, and it's one system. All the other games have these little differences in them that add up over time to they're not necessarily. It's a much looser series than you'd find in, say, a Gamer's Design, where it's OCS, where you have a series rulebook, and this is how everything is based on this series rulebook. You have so let me mention that. Pat, I don't know, Pat wanted me to mention this. Our Traveler game, which will be happening on Sundays from 1 to 5 p.m. Weekly, is looking for one additional player. So if anybody wants to play Traveler, it sounds really neat. And please email me at ARDWULF'S@gmail.com, and I will put you in touch with Pat. It's going to be a covert ops style campaign set in the Spinwood Marches.
So what happens? You just drop the person in?
We haven't started yet, so
Okay.
that person will be in at the beginning, but we're probably not going to start for another couple of weeks.
So you need this person to have time to play every week. Meaning, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say,
we need somebody who can commit to doing it for 4 hours.
Yeah, thank you. Jesus, I'm forgetting everything.
Mostly weekly, yeah. So, okay, Great Battles of History is more unified of a system. So the rest of the Great Battles of History games are kind of similar in the same way that like Mark Simonich's operational games are.
Yeah, the 42,
there's a lot of shared infrastructure there, but there's also a lot of little differences that you still kind of need to study each individual game.
Yeah.
And some of those games, like Elysia or the Japanese games, are very different, and which you can't play with simple GBOH rules. But if you want to play, say, Alexander and Cataphract and Hoplite and SPQR all together with one rule set that fits in like 30. Genesis is not GBOH.
It's not GBOH.
It is Richard Berg, though.
Right.
It's actually a neat looking game. I've got that. I've still never played it. If you want to play it all out of one 32-page rule book, then use simple GBOH. So, I mean, again, you're losing detail, but if that's not important, it's still not. It's not a a dummy game or anything. It's still a fairly sophisticated game.
What's a great day talking about here?
There is a series called Ancient Battles Deluxe, which I cannot speak of intelligently. I think it's from Decision, or is it Victory Point Games, or one of the other micro games?
It's not Worthington.
It's not. No, it's not Worthington. It's either Victory Point Games or somebody who was doing something in that similar format. Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Thank you. I mentioned I had a job interview today, so I mentioned it on Twitter.
No, I didn't call. Nobody called, eh?
Let me check the email, actually. I wasn't expecting another call. There it is. I was expecting an email. So I'm accepting this now.
You got the email.
I got the email.
We're going to see if you got a job now.
No, the interview's tomorrow.
Right. The second interview.
But it's a second interview. And usually if you're getting a second interview, things are looking pretty good. So
maybe we can go there, rough them up a little bit.
Maybe if this pans out, I could come visit you. They have a facility in Canada, so I might come up there.
That's small. Yeah, you can find me.
I have to visit you.
In Canada, where?
And I don't know. I didn't ask that. I didn't ask for the plant list.
In Canada.
Okay. Remake of Victory Point Games of 3W Ancients. That sounds right. Yeah. Okay. I don't know that that's a particularly popular nowadays, to be honest. HB might even have my phone number. I'll send HB my phone number should that be necessary. So
what's this?
Because it's on top.
Whoever you
but
are.
Then I guess Alaska makes Alaska like Canada's nose warmer.
You know what I'm saying? Get out. Let's block this chump. What a
the mysteriously bearded HB. Who we'll all be hearing from on
Yes.
Oh, is it? Oh, so that's interesting. So this is the Ancient Battles Deluxe. Then that's actually very interesting. That's probably a pretty good fit for Worthington, actually.
I thought I had it, man.
And they have very good component quality. Worthington.
Yes.
Beautiful components. So honestly, a lot of their games are not in my wheelhouse because they're. I'm a Hex Encounter guy.
Look, you have to give.
Not that they have no Hex Encounter games. They do.
You got to give them props because they're actually doing intro war games that are in many different subjects, man, which is awesome.
Their Civil War Brigade series which I forget exactly, but the Civil War Brigade Battle series is what it's called. There's 2 games in it, Antietam and Shiloh. The basic system is very nice. It's nice and clean. It's very easy to play. We liked the Shiloh game. I like the Antietam game somewhat less because of the way the victory conditions were structured. Yep.
Yeah. The components are fantastic.
Stay tuned for more news on that from me. So
when?
Whenever I hit 4,000 subscribers, I'm gonna give a couple of those away.
4,000. Hey,
yep, it's coming.
What the hell is going on?
My
I don't have 4,000 subscribers. I'm
analysis.
Than you.
You should. We should all have as many subscribers. We should have YouTube socialism, and the Player's Aid should give us a bunch of their subscribers.
That should not be spoken here.
They're probably lurking here in the chat, spying. They have their agents are in the stream right now.
I don't know. Alexander's picking a shirt or something. Anyways, when I see him, I'm going to kick him right in the neck.
Imagine what the inside of his closet looks like.
You're like, God.
Can you imagine the
horror?
I
don't think I ever did acid that heavy.
The
like
horror.
His closet, whatever. Anyways. Oh yeah, look at that. This guy HB, the player said.
The player said. I honestly, that's a problem with the way their domain reads and the YouTube, the Twitter address and stuff like that, because it looks like the player said.
So okay, going back,
I was not consulted. So
did you get the second interview?
Yes, I got the second interview. It's
Congratulations, Artie.
So
are you gonna wear a low cut dress or a low cut shirt?
Pat said I should wear a tank top and not shave. So I took a pic because I actually was wearing a tank top when he sent that message. So I took a picture of myself.
Ah, Jesus. Okay, so okay,
you two could join in the fun that happens on Twitter.
Great battles of history. What did you get the new Samurai Commanding Colors?
I did not.
40 scenarios, 40 battles.
I gotta assume that's all the battles. Really, that actually extends well beyond my interest in the samurai period. I have the 2 GBOH book games, Samurai and Ron, and boy, that's enough samurai stuff for me. I'm good. And I may, at some point, I'd like to try Sekigahara, but that's not a tactical game. That's a very abstract block game. So,
but it's a beautiful coffee table game.
It's certainly pretty, yeah. And it's aesthetically in harmony with its subject matter.
Oh, it's
to an extent that a lot of American war games are not.
Who's the guy that designed that game, Sekigahara? The guy's a big businessman. He's a billionaire.
I don't know.
I think he did one game. That's it.
I've never played it. I can tell you that that system is being adapted. Matt Calkins is the designer. I can tell you that that system is being adapted for other topics too. Apparently, he runs a software company, and it sounds like he's quite a fancy gentleman.
Well, he's a billionaire.
And he's won a bunch of WBC championships, too.
Hold on a second here. HB there. He's CEO of APPN. What the hell's that?
It's a company called Appian. I'm not actually familiar with their stuff. Presumably, they're named after the Appian Way in the Via Appia in Italy.
In Rome.
Well, it runs through Rome.
Well,
it goes to a bunch of places, but...
it's like the you guys have it in Boston there, that trail. What's it called? The Patriots Trail there.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I saw it. I played it on the Fallout.
I don't know anything about that Boston, really, other than the Red Sox come from there, and I hate the Red Sox, so. And they have a hilarious accent.
Yes, they do, man. I mean, David from Centurion's Review.
Oh, his isn't that
he's
thick.
Boston, man.
Yeah, but his accent's not that thick.
Seriously?
That's not. I've heard thicker. Well, I had some. I used to, when I was a teenager working in a stock and shelves at the grocery store. We had, like, the head cashier was this lady from Boston. And I can't even try to do that accent, to be honest. I'll come out sounding like I'm from New York or New Jersey, more likely.
Okay, yeah. Going this question. Yes, they are bland, and you said something is because they chose the terrain as such. Now, why wouldn't they choose a more tactical terrain?
Because the the battles we know about are battles between big centralized, somewhat centralized, at least, states with armies, right? You can't leverage your huge army if half the terrain is woods. That's the kind of thing you'd have a guerrilla battle on, right? But that's not to say it never happened. I mean, the Teutoburger Wald is a classic example of the Romans getting smoked in a forest. It's the forest. But a lot of the battles, it would be civilized commander against civilized commander, and he thinks he's better than the other guy. The Roman guy always thinks he's better than the other guy. So even if that's not the case, like Cannae, or the commanders, the Romans had a lot of commanders who were political appointees, right? That's just how it works. Yes. This guy won the election, so he gets to go lead the army now. And sometimes one of those guys, there's 2 consuls a year. One of those guys stays home in Rome, and the other guy goes and leads the army. But at Cannae, both of them were out there, and they were fighting over who was going to be in charge. So one guy says, I don't think we should engage Hannibal. We should decline battle today. But the other guy was in charge that day, and he knew that the next day, if he didn't attack that day, then the other guy would try to evade. So they, got caught pants down by Hannibal and got spanked badly.
Now, why wouldn't they? Again, my question about terrain. Why wouldn't they set up on hills? They put their catapults on hills or something and use that and come in through this valley or whatever.
So largely the battle happens in a place where both commanders agree that the battle will happen there.
Also,
not that one of them does. Sometimes one commander can outmaneuver another, and that's a thing that happened. Or sometimes there'll be like a river on one side that will protect a flank or something like that. But generally speaking, the battle happens where both commanders agree, because you can just march away. The other army is not really probably any faster than you.
HB says something really, really, and you said it before. I mean, obviously, history is written by the victors. Obviously, it's one-sided.
Well, sometimes history is written by B.H. Liddell Hart. So B.H. Liddell Hart wrote a book called Scipio Africanus, Greater Than Napoleon. And it's about Scipio Africanus and the final battle with Hannibal at Zama, okay? And Hart relies extensively on the numbers and information from Livy as his ancient source, but Livy was writing a couple hundred years later. Herodotus was contemporary with the Second Punic War and was, met Hannibal and got like firsthand information. He's a far more reliable source. But a lot of these battles, and actually in Great Battles of History, you'll see Richard Berg's notes on that. It's like, hey, we really don't know what happened here. We're extrapolating this, and this. But that's absolutely a thing. I mean, we don't have tons of information about the details of all these battles. And even a big one like Zama, which literally is the battle that changed the course of Western civilization, there's people arguing about did the Romans outnumber the Carthaginians, or did the Carthaginians outnumber the Romans? Livy said the Carthaginians outnumbered the Romans, but Herodotus, who was contemporary, said the Romans outnumbered the Carthaginians. Which is it? Right. So this is a discussion that you can have, and then you can tap into other sources too, like somebody like Appian or somebody like that. Not that he's good for that battle, but to try and extract more information, because he had access to sources that we have now lost. A lot of the Roman Tacitus is a big source. Livy is a big source. Herodotus is a big source. Who's the other main Roman historian, most of whose work is lost? Some of Livy is lost too. Livy's good, actually. Livy's worth reading, but he's writing a couple hundred years after this period.
That's I got to get into ancients, man. There's it's missing in my life. I don't know where to start in terms of, okay, here we are on the board now. Let's go. Okay, what?
Yeah, another major source for a lot of this stuff is actually Caesar. Caesar wrote, right? He wrote a book on the Civil War and wrote a book on the Gallic Wars, and those are actually quite readable. They're even readable in the original Latin if you're particularly brave.
Well, yeah.
I'll see you, HB. We'll see you Friday.
What's this?
Is the 600s considered ancients? I would consider it ancients, yes.
What is that?
I assume it's like the 7th century AD is what he means.
Oh, the 600s. Okay, so yeah. I would consider it ancients.
I would. I mean, again, it's kind of late antiquity, but so what? I mean, you know, there's still more. It depends on the topic, right? So let's say you have a Chandragupta, the great GBOH game about battles of ancient India. Those are way later than one we typically associate with the ancients period, right? If I'm remembering correctly, anyway. So those are all like. No, I'm wrong. They're all 2nd, 3rd, 4th century AD. So they're later than I thought. Oh yeah, totally. I mean, Caesar's telling you his point of view there. So he's not an unbiased observer in the Civil War, for example. And the Gallic Wars specifically was kind of written to send back to Rome to justify his having that war in the first place, which he wasn't supposed to be having. So yes, but still, you know, for a lot of those battles in Gaul, that's the source, right? The Gauls didn't write anything down, so that's the source we have.
Well, you're saying the Gauls are stupid compared to the Italians?
I'm saying they did not have no, actually, but we don't have their records. We have the Romans' records.
Yeah. Hey, Artie, since we got, I'm sure this is a 5-minute question here. So, propaganda. Games, huge games, I guess monsters and all that. Not even monsters, where they have to deal with logistics of all kinds. Are these things incorporated into ancient battles, into like a game like this, like Cataphract? Or
generally not, but here's why. Game like Cataphract is a tactical game, right? So by the time the battle starts that you're playing out in Cataphract, or in really any of the GBOH games, with Cataphract as the sole exception, the logistics part is already decided, right? We've already decided who's going to make it to the battlefield and who's not, and whether you have arrows or not, whatever. And generally, logistics, the biggest thing about logistics was not ammunition, it was food, right? Oh, and disease. Let's not forget the logistics of bringing disease to the army, too.
Yeah, so there's no Ancients game with that amount of information like a heavy war game.
No, there is, but they're operational games rather than tactical games. Games that deal with that in some detail include the Ancient World series that I mentioned before, and Imperium Romanum, which is the current version is available from Decision Games.
It's funny because I was talking about that with Morgan. The only time I went to Stack Academy in Montreal, a con, and she was showing us Hubris. And at one point, it was time for, I guess, administration phase, and she had to feed the person had to feed the cattle, had to feed, because they're bringing all the equipment, they're bringing all the. It's important. And
that is another game that sits at that level that's more strategic or operational, where logistics becomes a thing that you have to worry about.
That's right.
You know, at the battle at Pharsalus, who cares? That's already decided. That Titus the centurion didn't eat lunch yesterday. That happened already. We're ignoring it now.
Anyways, Hardy, man, you're a wealth of information. It's awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And you said the Battle of Zama, and there was something else I wanted to take down. Oh, man, I forgot. God, I'm so dafted. Anyways.
I agree with Hart's conclusion in the book, by the way, which is that Scipio Africanus was a great strategic genius. I absolutely agree with that. Just his numbers aren't trustworthy. What? So a lot of the analysis that takes him there.
You call him Scipio?
Scipio.
Isn't it Scipio?
It's Scipio. The Romans would have called it Scipio. Well, Scipio. How it's pronounced so Church Latin and Classical Latin are different rules of pronunciation. The C is just always hard in Classical.
It's always hard?
Yeah. So it's Scipio. It's also Caesar and not Caesar.
That's right.
Which is why you have the German word Kaiser and not Caesar.
And, you know, I did a thing on the Dice Tower, and I'm screaming at people, where the hell do you think he got that name? Kaiser. It comes from the Italians. His name was Kaiser. For God's sakes. And it's not the Veni Vidi Vici. It's W, man. Veni Vidi Vici.
It's hard. That's tricky, man. I say that wrong sometimes too. So the Roman alphabet is our alphabet, right? But they didn't have the letter J and they didn't have the letter U. So both letters had a vowel version and a consonant version.
Look at you, man.
So I took a bunch of Latin in college too. So not as much as Liz from Beyond Solitaire. She's got like a PhD in Latin. I took it like a year and a half of Latin.
Man, so, I didn't know, man. We should have had her on. Bloody hell.
I'd love to talk to her. Actually, we could talk in Latin. I totally couldn't do that. Totally couldn't do that. Ubi laudatorium est, which I'm sure she would find absolutely hilarious.
Is she fluent in Latin?
Yeah, she's a Latin teacher.
Awesome. She's awesome.
Oh, get her next time. Get Liz on here next time. I'm ashamed of you for not getting her on here.
Hold on, it's at your house next week.
Well, yeah, but you got to do the work.
Oh, I see.
So
if you want me to get Liz on, let's maximize Liz. What are we going to talk about?
We should talk about either solitaire games, actually.
No, hold on a second. Let's take her expertise into account here.
Yeah, but we talked about that this week. We could do Ancients 2 next week, or we could talk about solitaire games because she does a lot of that on her channel. Plus, she has a podcast and all that.
No, I know. Yeah,
she's doing a lot of great stuff.
She's great. Anyway, so that's it. Artie, your house next week. Guys, I'm going to plug it again. San Diego HistCon. I was corrected. It's not Historicon. It's HistCon.
There's another convention called Historicon.
That's why. That you correcting me? Was that you correcting me?
That was probably the mysterious HB. Yeah. But
so anyways,
he doesn't want to get sued by Historicon. So
anyways, chat, thank you very much for being here. You guys make it. It's fun. It's like we hang around. It's like supper or something, you know?
Yeah, it is an informal chat about whatever we want to talk about. So
Artie, next week it's yours.
Yep, we'll do it.
And I'll try to get Liz.
Okay. Maybe I should contact her because we're friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I'll ask her and see if she can do it. I don't know if she can, but I'll ask.
Okay, so you know what? I'm just gonna cut the show, Artie. We're gonna go out, and I'm not even gonna say goodbye at the end of the goodbye.
Okay, goodbye.
See ya, guys.